My father died of a heroin overdose. Yes, your grandfather. He died November the 11th, 2017, of a heroin overdose. He was in the ER 2 weeks straight of a heroin overdose, and they sent him home on Narcan.
Naloxone, whose brand name is Narcan, is a narcotic used to treat overdoses in emergency situations.
So they sent your grandfather home with a prescription for that because they knew he was a drug addict. And he had the prescription in his hand, never got it filled, and died in his living room of an overdose.
Not all recovery programs are accessible to every addict. There is definitely a difference between the programs rich people can get into versus the ones impoverished people can. The Farley Center, for example, is an expensive facility in Virginia that you can't get into without forking over a decent amount of money. The quality of treatment is not dependent upon the amount of money you have either. Shown here are two conflicting reviews of the Farley Center demonstrating that quality doesn't rely on finances. Experiences at rehab facilities and the quality doesn't always depend on things such as socioeconomic status and insurance either, but these do play an important role. However, there are recovery programs that any addict, no matter their financial situation, can access. These are commonly nonprofits that are funded through government programs, including RAP Inc., a recovery program that has been in DC since 1970. These programs are not without their faults.
Can only keep our people here for 28 days and give them an extension of 14 days. But in the reality of things, for a client who's been struggling with a heroin addiction for 30 years, 28 days is not enough by any means. In the transitional housing programs that we transition them to, is about 6 to 9 months there as well. I just think that is, I think that's horrendous, because in order for us to really support our people and take care of them, they need time to sit down for a while. They need, I would say, at least a year in a program, or approximately a year. Let me say approximately a year in a program to really learn new behaviors, because there's a lot of, coping skills can be healthy or unhealthy, right? Using drugs and alcohol is an unhealthy coping skill.
Recovery programs do not fix an addict's problems. They teach addicts new ways of living, how to re-enter themselves into their community, and how to find healthier ways of coping that don't involve substance abuse. Recovery programs on their own, however, are not enough to heal an addict. There are two major issues that stop a recovery program from working as well as it could.
If you didn't have any community-based support groups set up, then once they transition back to the communities, they would still go right back to the same behaviors.
Number one, there has to be continued support once the program is over.
At the end of the day, it's person by person, right? So they have to have the internal drive and the motivation to overcome their challenges and, get that employment back, and get their housing back and get their family back.
Number two, Addicts have to have the personal drive to want to live a better life, or else the program doesn't really work. In addition to this, many people, especially those of lower income and limited resources, are not even aware that there are opportunities for them to seek available help.
I think that we really don't have enough people advocating for recovery. We don't have people going out putting a message out that, these things that seem like the way that the world is falling, that show that you don't have to go through it alone. We have different types of support groups, but the thing is, you just have to have a willingness, because the program of recovery is actually for those who want it and not for the people that need it. You have a lot of people that's just still haven't identified with the fact that there is no actual future in using and crime.
With these issues combined with the stigma and guilt towards substance abuse and the stress from being in poverty, it can be incredibly difficult for impoverished addicts to begin their journey to recovery. Here are 3 things that need to be addressed in order to solve addiction and poverty. 1. We need to broaden the amount of people who can have access to transition housing. The housing itself needs to be expanded, and the amount of beds needs to be increased.
There are limited transitional housing programs in DC, which makes it incredibly hard for us to place people. And for women, it can be even harder. Women and children, it can be even harder.
Instead of the government using their money for military, this money needs to be put into the housing system. As well as this, transitional and recovery housing needs to be made publicly announced to further expand their outreach to addicts in need of help. 2. During rehabilitation, addicts need to be supported by their families, not shamed for the past decisions.
Fell to the wayside, and it was largely due with me. And it was due because there was so much guilt, shame, sadness around my actions and what I had lost and what my life no longer was, that I just could not bring myself to be around those people anymore, because my life no longer was like theirs. It was no longer the fairy tale life that I had.
Family and friend support creates a stronger encouragement for addicts due to existing intimacy. These relationships must be constantly ingrained into them in order to motivate them to recovery. 3. Jail systems need rehabilitation incorporated into them instead of pure consequence. Consequence teaches endurance. Rehabilitation teaches change and improvement.
Missouri.
My actions affected everyone. It wasn't just me. And so for me, my relationship with my children, of everyone that it would affected, those 3 people in my life were the ones that I was so most determined to mend.